You know, some international relationships are like these incredibly long novels, full of hidden twists and turns that you just don't see coming. Well, the story of India and Israel is absolutely one of those. So let's dive into this fascinating journey and figure out how this whole thing actually came together.
So here's the big puzzle we're going to try and solve. Today, you see this incredibly strong alliance between India and Israel. But it wasn't always like this, not even close. In fact, for most of their history, they were practically on different planets diplomatically. So how on earth did we go from there to here?
And to really get it, you have to appreciate just how improbable this whole partnership seemed for so many decades. Seriously, this is a story that just defies any simple explanation.
And the key that unlocks this entire story, the thing that makes it all make sense, is one powerful diplomatic idea: de-hyphenation. Now, I know it sounds a little academic, but trust me, it's an absolute game changer. We're going to break down exactly what it means in just a bit.
But before we get to that big idea, we've got to rewind the clock. Because to really understand the alliance, you first have to understand the decades and decades of distance they had to overcome.
All right, this timeline really gives you the bird's eye view of the whole journey. Just look at those long gaps, followed by this slow, gradual buildup, and then bam, this massive acceleration in just the last few years. We're going to walk through what happened at each of these key moments.
For a long time after its independence, India's entire foreign policy was really built on this idea of anti-colonial solidarity. And that worldview created this very natural, very deep sympathy for the Palestinian cause, which was seen as a similar struggle for self-determination.
Now check this out, because this is where it gets really interesting. In 1947, India actually voted against the UN plan that would have created Israel. And yeah, it officially recognized the State of Israel in 1950, but it didn't establish full diplomatic relations. You can see how that public support for the other side evolved, culminating in 1988 when India formally recognized the State of Palestine. For decades, its public stance was crystal clear.
But, you know, diplomacy's never that simple, is it? Underneath that very public, very ideological position, a much more pragmatic, very quiet security relationship was already starting to form. We're talking as far back as the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971. A deep but very discreet bond was being built.
So, how did this quiet, behind-the-scenes cooperation start to move out into the open? Well, that brings us to our next chapter, the slow, gradual, and at times pretty challenging diplomatic thought. The first really big public shift happened in 1992. This was the year India finally established full diplomatic relations with Israel. Embassies opened up in New Delhi and Tel Aviv, and for the very first time, the relationship was brought out of the shadows.
But the real turning point, the moment that truly cemented a deep and lasting trust, was during the 1999 Kargil War. At a really critical time, Israel provided crucial military supplies and intelligence to India. This wasn't just a transaction. This forged a bond of reliability, a level of trust in the defense world that would basically underpin everything that was to come.
Which brings us right to the core concept of this whole explainer. How did India pull this off? How did it build this new, open relationship with Israel while still maintaining its historical ties with Palestine? The answer is the de-hyphenation doctrine.
And this one event perfectly shows the new policy in action. For decades, any high-level official trip to Israel was hyphenated. It was always paired with a stop in Ramallah to visit the Palestinian leadership. But in 2017, Prime Minister Modi completely broke with that precedent. He visited Israel, and only Israel. It was a hugely powerful and symbolic statement.
So what exactly is de-hyphenation? It's actually pretty straightforward. It's the policy of unlinking the two relationships. India basically decided it would pursue its relationship with Israel and its relationship with Palestine on two totally separate independent tracks, judging each one on its own merits. This little comparison makes the whole concept super clear. On the left, you've got the old way, where one relationship was always being held hostage by the other. And on the right, you have the new doctrine, two separate paths, allowing each relationship to grow and develop without being held back by the other. Now, this shift wasn't just a small change in protocol. It was a fundamental change in how India saw the world, and it unlocked the potential for a completely new kind of global alliance. Once de-hyphenation became official policy, the relationship just took off. I mean, the acceleration was dramatic. That 2017 visit was the spark. By 2021, you see the formation of the I2U2 group, which puts India and Israel in a strategic bloc with the UAE and the US.
and by 2026, it's all formalized into a special strategic partnership.
So the most important thing to get here is that this isn't just about defense anymore, not by a long shot. A special strategic partnership means it's a multi-domain alliance. We're talking about deep cooperation in tech, agriculture, water management, and real strategic alignment on the global stage.
And all of this leaves us with a really fascinating final question. In a world that's just full of complex, tangled-up conflicts, could this dehyphenated strategy, this idea of treating relationships independently, be a blueprint for other nations? Is this what the future of modern diplomacy looks like? It's definitely something to think about.